Jeff from California, you're on the line, Jeff.
Jeff, I'm hoping you'll mildly agree with us, just for a change of pace.
I'm really pushing for a California single payer, and I think one way to do that financially is for California to state bank.
Mm-hmm.
So I am going to my town hall with Phil Ting, who's my legislator, and to bring this up and really push for a California state bank for us to pay for, because I believe the biggest problem in this country is the big banks in Wall Street to control the money, destroy other countries, and run us into ruin. And we could be the example for the rest of the country with the state bank, single payer, how it can be done. So what's your thoughts on that?
Jeff, I think that's a great point, a great question. Two great concepts of a state bank. California could have a state, and that would be an enormous public bank. And then use the profit from that to fund single-payer healthcare in California. I don't see why those two things can't go together. There is an actual bill that's moving in California, and it doesn't include the banking aspect. But do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, sure. I think it's a good idea. I support both those things separately as well as together. And I wrote a piece called Sick Money about 4 years ago, tracing how investment banks and Wall Street firms are destroying our healthcare economy from the bottom up by giving everything from pharmacies to doctors' offices in financial incentives to overcharge and overbill and overtreat. So I think if a state bank could be used to start to pull that out of the system too, that's a very interesting idea. I'm all for it.
Jeff, thanks so much for your call. I'm going to take one more call. Paul on WCPT in Chicago. Paul, you're on the line.
Well, I think we need a completely new paradigm shift where, honestly, we don't need to argue that health care is a right. Health care and health is not an insurable commodity. It does not fit the model of insurance unless, and I'll leave it to the Republicans to do this, you are willing to put a finite dollar value on a life. And if they're going to, like your house or your car, and if you're going to do that, let's start with this. Let's not talk about the sanctity of life when a prematurely born baby the care will run into the millions of dollars before this baby can even leave the hospital to go home with lifelong pre-existing conditions. Or on the other end of the spectrum, for instance, my wife, she died of cancer. The last year of her life, she died of breast cancer, the last year of her life was probably the most expensive. Leave it to the Republicans to say, oh, just let her die. We're not going to keep paying to have her in hospice. Just let her die in pain. Let them be the ones to do that. We're not talking about the right, if that's what they want to do, but they argue the sanctity of life. The insurance model does not fit health. The health of a nation is on the cost side of the balance sheet, and it must be paid for before anything else, certainly before military weaponry, which is used to kill people.
Paul, thank you so much for your point. We're going to come back after a quick break. But I don't have much to add to what you said. Putting a dollar figure on life is exactly what the Republicans want to do. And, we just saw that. It's 10 people die for a $7 million tax cut. Paul, thanks so much for your call. Welcome back to the Thom Hartmann Program. I'm Alex Lawson, filling in for Tom. Richard Eskow, staying in studio. We have time for one more. But do you want to say anything to the last caller?
Yeah, a couple things. One, first of all, I'm sorry for his loss. And secondly, it's absolutely right to say you can't be the quote unquote, you can't call yourself pro-life and then allow people to die for financial reasons. One of my first jobs, I was in my 20s. I was a computer guy for an HMO. There was a newborn baby, a neonate, that was projected to cost $1 million a month. And the CFO in a staff meeting about it said, snuff the kid.
Wow.
Snuff the kid. And when everybody was discussing, he said, I was kind of kidding. But, snuff the kid is a mentality that says, in effect, we believe in the right to life from the moment of conception till the moment of birth. And then, buddy, you're on your own. That is an immoral way to live. And I think that, unfortunately, this last caller's personal tragedy illustrated that all too well.
And, yep, that's exactly right. Steve in Georgia, you're on the line.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. What I want to ask is, I don't hear this discussion too much, but, a couple of the shortcomings of Obamacare, basically the ones that, have caused insurance companies either just drop out of Obamacare altogether or to raise their premiums. Is that something that can actually be solved within, the framework of Obamacare, or is it just a consequence of what's going to happen? And that's just the way it goes.
It's a great question, Steve. I'm going to have a short answer, and then Richard can take it. The short answer is yes, you could do something in Obamacare. We didn't. It's not there. There are no teeth to enforce anything against the insurers. It is just a promise. There are only carrots, and then the insurers were just going to magically act better. But we have absolute, rigorous, undeniable proof that that doesn't work because of what they did. Because of what they did, that they kept raising premiums, that they kept pushing these mergers, that they pulled out of markets to force the federal government to allow mergers. The truth of the matter is that we could do it in the private system. You could have teeth in there. You could say, okay, well, if you don't keep rates affordable, you won't be able to be part of Medicare Advantage. I would get rid of Medicare Advantage. I want to give Richard time to answer as well in the last minute here. The truth is you can do it in the private side, but there's no reason to, because what we should understand is that the path forward, there will be single payer. It's just, is it going to be one giant corporation that extracts all of our money and health, or is it going to be a public single payer? And I leave 30 seconds to Richard.
Well, I'm just going to say this. We have single payer. You go to Birmingham, Alabama. Blue Cross of Alabama has 80-90% of the market. That's duplicated all around the country. The question is, are the people going to run it, or are Wall Street investors going to run it? And that's the last thought I'll give you there.
So, Steve, I think that is the shortcomings of Obamacare are very real. They did not, and I'll put we in there, did not, I was on the outside. I wasn't writing the bill. We were fighting for more. But there were no teeth in what would happen if the private insurers acted poorly, if they kept racing premiums up. I mean, like they pulled it back a little, but still there were not enough teeth in the law. And going forward, we shouldn't even allow the insurance industry to continue to exist. Welcome back to the Thom Hartmann Program. I'm Alex Lawson, filling in for Tom, and thank you so much for listening today. I'm going to be with you all week. Tom is filming or working on a documentary on climate change, and so you're stuck with me, and we're going to have a good time. I always enjoy being stuck with you because it gives me a lot of hope. All the calls, there's sadness and there's anger and there's rage, but there is always a thread of hope in there as well, because it is you all. It is Tom's listeners that remind me that in every corner of this country, from coast to coast and everywhere in between, there is an undeniable urgency to us standing together. And right now, it's so apparent because we are facing these attacks. And so we're standing up and fighting back. But what always gives me hope is there are millions of us who have never forgotten what we're fighting for. That we're not just fighting against Donald Trump, Le Pen, all of the right-wing authoritarianism that's on the rise around the world, but we're fighting for a just world. We're fighting for a world that acknowledges that together we can come up with a system that acknowledges climate change and builds a green future for everyone, that doesn't put a dollar figure on a person's life and doesn't allow billionaires on Wall Street to take 10 people per year for a $7 million tax cut. We only lose when we forget what we're fighting for. So thank you for always reminding me that none of us have forgotten. You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. I'm Alex Lawson, and I'll see you tomorrow.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.